in Salt Lake. I didn't know that.
I live in Utah and still teach part-time at, oh man, bad hair day.
No, you look good. And you know what? We're going to get started. And
yeah, let's go.
Just bear with me 1 second here.
Where are you physically, Bruce?
Right outside of New York City. We live
fun.
in a beautiful place called Hastings-on-Hudson.
Super.
And it really is a great place. Actually, I'm going to give people a few more minutes. Let's see here.
Oh, I see participants coming on. So
yeah. So
let
now
me get my screen set. It's always fun to welcome people into your office. So
yeah, what a nice deal, huh? Let me just bear with me 1 more second here. Why can I not get this to be? We may be live and I don't know it. So I am going to assume, folks, I'm going to I believe we are live here. And so if any of you are joining us, I'm going to set up the chat and somebody can confirm with us if we are indeed live. Sorry about this, Dave. This is the first one I have done with you this way. So it looks like we're live. So I'm going to start by, introducing you. Dave Urlich, it's a great pleasure to see you almost in the flesh. I've been following your work for years. My name is Bruce Folger. I'm the founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance, and we're an organization founded in 2008 with the goal of creating a strategic and systematic approach to engaging all stakeholders. Dave is a professor at you're a Rennes-Likert professor, I believe, if I'm pronouncing that right, Dave, at the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. And he's a partner at the RBL Group, which is a leading consulting firm that helps organizations and leaders drive value. But more than that, I think you've been a major influencer. You've written over 200 articles and books, I believe, on all areas of human capital management and human resources. You've served on many boards. And Herman Miller is really one of the great companies. We would call them one of the early stakeholder capitalist companies. And your name appears in all sorts of media. So Dave, thank you so much for joining us today.
Bruce, what an honor. And what a delight to get to peek into your office. I'm trying to figure out what that picture is behind you.
That is a Renoir.
I mean, the fact that I have no clue says a lot about me.
Well, you can barely see it anyway, and I won't even give you the history of that Renoir. But you're.
So if it's an original, and if you could give us an address, you'll have some guests.
Yes. No, I do have an original in here, but it's not a Renoir, thankfully. So Dave, thank you again so much for taking the time. And I'm really going to, it's interesting to speak with you because I've been at this quest probably longer than anybody except you. Yeah, you go back, you look younger than I am, but I believe you've been working at the whole concept of advancing the cause of human capital, human resources, really since the late 80s. So my first question to you, Dave, and by the way, I published recently or linked in LinkedIn an article you did in HBR about the state of human resources. And it really didn't sound to me like we have accomplished what you in that article so really way ahead of your time outlined for human resources. Where are we today in the state of human resources management, human capital management? CEOs say that people are their #1 asset. Are they really acting that way?
Boy, what a bunch of good questions. And let me try to respond. First of all, because I've been doing webinars, I'm finding you can get personal. This is my dissertation from 1982. So that's how old I am. And it's on numerical taxonomy. So if you want, numerical taxonomy is the science of order, taxonomy, and numerical, I'm trained as a statistician. My roots go deep into analytics and data. It was a huge data set, and I'll go quickly and get to your specific question. I had 670 US firms, 144 Japanese firms on 90 variables. So I had a 670 by 670 matrix 90 times. And back decades ago, I finished in 82. I'd had to go in at midnight at UCLA, and I shut down their entire computer system for an hour each time I did an analysis. Today, you do it on a wristwatch. And just to finish off my heritage, when you do a dissertation, they post it on microfilms, university microfilms. It's sold, and I got $11.65. So and I knew even then that was, 2 years of work for $11. So I've been at this longer than you have. Has the HR world changed? It's chunky and it's clunky. I'm going to start with 20-60-20. 20% of HR people and business leaders are exceptional. I mean, this is a normal distribution. You see them, you hear about them, they get written up. 20% are never going to change. And maybe somebody says it's 30, maybe it's 15, but there's a chunk of folks in any agenda that are just locked into their heritage and they're not going to change. I frankly want to ignore both of those groups. The 20% who are good, I simply get in their way. And the 20% who are bad, I'm wasting my time. And that everybody counts. I get that. But so the question is, what's happening to the 60%? I like data. I just showed you a dissertation. We've been collecting data since '87, and we've done 7 rounds of data every 5 years. What are the set of competencies of HR professionals? It's fun to show, and I won't show it, and we look at a 360 assessment. So this is not seen by yourself, because those are biased, but by other people. I'll give you an example. In 1987, the words have changed, but the message is the same. Knowing the business was like 3.08 out of 5. Pretty moderate on a scale. Today it's 4.08. In almost every dimension over 40 years or 30 years, the perceived competencies of HR professionals have gone up. Now, here's one of the dilemmas. I think the competencies of HR people are going up. We have pretty good data on that. I think the expectations have risen faster. So I think business leaders are starting to say, not just people are our most important asset as a trite concept, they really believe people are the ingredients of our future success. And so as the expectations rise faster than the skill set, there's always a stretch for what HR needs to do better. So has HR improved? I would argue yes. Our data says yes. Does HR need to improve even more? I would argue yes. So funny answer to your question, but I tend to see progress as fast as I'd like, absolutely not. And if you want to write an article about bad HR people, give me 10 minutes and I'll find you 10. And if you want to write, on the other hand, an article that's an apologist about 10 good HR people, both of those articles, I hate HR, that's a stupid article because you can go find either sides. I'm more worried about, in general, I think we see progress, but I think the expectations are ahead of the progress.
Well, and to me, the blaming of HR to me is really unfair. I think the problem is with the CEO. I think that I think, and I'd like to get your view, that 80% of every CEO in a private conversation will tell you, yes, people are my number one asset. But in a really private conversation over a glass of wine or whatever, they'll also tell you that they're my biggest pain in the butt. And that if I could get rid of any customer and any employee, if I could run a business without employees and customers, it'd be great, which is why I think people talk about robotics. I'm not even kidding. So don't you think at the end of the day that 80% of CEOs, they don't learn about it in most schools. We learn about leadership. Oh, there's tons of courses on leadership. And I've become a skeptic because there's 20 years of courses on leadership and nothing I don't think has really changed. And I'm talking about HR now. I'm talking about the CEO's mentality. So how many CEOs would say, people are not only my number one asset, but I have a strategic and systematic approach to managing my people strategies. I've got clear metrics and I'm continuously improving it.
My answer would always be not enough. But we're still seeing progress. What I love to do when I have a privilege, and again, most CEOs who invite me in tend to be oriented to the issue. So I'm getting a bias sample and I'm not naive about that. But when they say, I love to do the following, and I'd encourage HR professionals or other to do it, go look at the rhetoric. Go look at the letter to investors in the annual report. Go look at the shareholders meeting. Go look at the investor call. And you'll almost see something about people and organization and how critical they are. Then what I love to do is go to the CEO's administrative assistant and ask him or her to say, show me their calendar. Your CEO today said that customers are number one, and then people, and then innovation. In the last 90 days, being liberal, how much time has the CEO spent on customer, employee values, whatever you want to call that, or on innovation, if that's the issue? I think sometimes we create leadership hypocrisy, and I'm guilty of that as well. When I was younger, we had children, And we used to say to them, clean your room, clean your room, clean your room. And then our kids became 10, 11, 12, and they'd look at us and say, Dad, your room's a mess. And I think that leadership hypocrisy exists. And part of our job as advisors or as HR professionals is to hold up the mirror. And I think the calendar check is a very simple way to do that. And I've seen that help some CEOs. The other thing is sometimes CEOs don't know what it means. So what does it mean for me to care for my people? And I hope that those of us in HR can say, that's not an abstraction, and nor is it a speech. I think right now, at least in America, we see a lot of rhetoric and speeches, proclamations. I proclaim this, I proclaim that. And frankly, they remind me a little bit of fortune cookie leadership. You know, oh, your fortune is great. My life has never changed because of a fortune cookie. And I don't think these proclamations are going to change much. And I think our job in HR is to say, if you believe that, here's some of the behaviors you should do. Here's some of the policies you should invest in. And here's some of the time and attention you can put on these issues. And I think that then helps the CEO say, this is not an abstraction, but this is something concrete that I can work on.
Now, one of the issues to me is scorecards. What scorecards do you run your business on? And that's another question I would ask the CEO. You know, gee, what's your revenue per customer? What's your profit per customer? What's your customer churn? What's your revenue per employee? What's your cost per employee? What's your churn? What's their willingness to recommend? You know, these, to me, most companies don't have scorecards. You might be familiar with the ISO 30414 human capital standards, which, you know, HR is running away from, in my view, as fast as, you know, a mouse runs away from a cat. You see almost no discussion of those standards. Now, people, I think, understand them. HR people don't like compliance, you know, and ISO standards are voluntary. But my question to you is, wouldn't you say that a fair measure of a commitment to people is having scorecards, meaningful scorecards, that help me see whether all these engagement programs are having effect on my bottom line, and even trying to put evaluation on my human capital? Is that kind of the next frontier?
I'm going to I love evolution. I love learning. That's my passion. I hope that for those who teach and use PowerPoint slides, my personal standard is I want to have 20 to 25% new slides every 18 to 24 months. And people say, well, that's pretty slow. That sounds easy. That's really hard for anybody who's taught long-term, because you got to reinvent. So let me tell you my view of the analytics and where I think we're headed around standards. I did a book with two brilliant folks, Brian Becker and Mark Cusick, called the HR Scorecard about 20 years ago.
Wow.
It was a good book, good ideas, and I think it's out of date. So I think we started with scorecards, dashboards, and standards. I think the next step, and I see some good HR folks doing it, and again, when I talk, Bruce, I can find any HR folks along this continuum. I can find folks doing this and folks not doing it. But so I'm going to try to lay out a vision of the future. So I think scorecards and dashboards and standards, if you will, are a baseline. The second level is insight. So we go into data and we do cloud analytics. And again, my dissertation was on taxonomy. It's clustering algorithms, it's statistics and deep analysis. And so Amazon has insights about, you know, you bought books A, B, C, and D, you're going to buy book E. And I think companies are doing that. And we see a lot of consumer employee insights and just, you know, why did people leave? What are the insights? The third level is intervention. So if we do this, what's going to happen? And we begin to get some intervention. So those who went to training versus those who didn't. I should be scratching my ear in public. I'm sorry. This is such a weird world we live in. Welcome to my office and my scratching my ear.
Great.
And that's okay. We're at home, although I don't have a Renoir. I have an art that my children drew, that little picture of my father's truck. So it's original, but it's of my father's truck by my daughter.
Well, there's also a great photo behind that, but that's for another story.
Those are other stories. So you got scorecards, dashboards, you got insights, you got interventions. Let me tell you where I hope HR goes. And it's what you said, but I'm trying to dissect it a little bit more refinedly. I hope we go to, I'm going to call it impact or guidance. I think the HR field has been too lazy with insights. How many people got training? What's a dashboard? or a scorecard. That's not very, 40% of people got training, and that's useful. There's an insight. What did you train on? There's an intervention. Those who went to training got more help. What I'm interested in is guidance. What HR work should we do that will guide you to the outcome you care about? And I really love the metaphor of guidance because guidance doesn't start with the activity, the scorecard. It starts with the aspiration. For example, in culture right now, I did a little piece, and I think HR is getting more connected to culture. There's some great work out there that describes culture, heat maps of culture, how we make decisions, how we work. What I'm interested in is what should our culture be, given that we got to win in a tough marketplace. So don't just tell me what your culture is. That's a nice description. Don't tell me I'm overweight. That's helpful. Oh, wow, I should pay you for that. Give me some guidance about what I should do. And when I say that to HR people, they go nuts. You're being prescriptive. And my comment is, yeah, because the world we live in, culture is not the roots of the tree. Culture is the leaves and branches that are growing and changing in the fruits. I want HR to move from scorecards to insights to interventions to guidance. So we're trying to say, when you think about guidance, for example, I'm doing a talk this week, and I should confess, I'm doing a talk on Thursday on employee experience, and it's not done yet, but I shouldn't confess that. You should be doing this talk, not me. I'm going to say employee experience is not the issue. We've done a lot of work on morale, motivation, engagement. The issue is, can you create the right employee experience so that your customers and your investors will have a better experience? Because absent that, it becomes a closed loop. And in fact, I was working on that last night. The correlation between employee experience and customer experience is actually quite high. Investors are now looking at employee engagement scores that you and your group have done brilliant work on. I think that HR's next step is going to be, when we have an investor meeting, either the monthly call or a road show or an annual report, that employee engagement data better be front and center, because it gives the investor confidence in what the future might bring. So that for me is the guidance agenda. It's not just scorecards or dashboards or even insights, big data. It's not even interventions. It's guidance. Where are we going? And that's where I hope we can help HR.
By the way, that's the entire mission of our organization, because we've been talking about employee engagement and engagement for 20 years. And, the scores haven't changed much. They've gone up a little bit, and they seem to vary with the economy rather than with organizational culture. So and I noticed companies have been doing employee surveys and customer surveys for years, but no one ever does anything with them. And it gets to what you're talking about. At the end of the day,
let me tell you how you get it. If I go to a business leader and I say, your net promoter score is 60 out of 100. And as a result of that, your revenue from targeted customers, I'm trying to use your metrics, you're not market share of overall, but your market share of your targeted customers has flat. Would you like to increase that revenue from targeted customers? Duh. I mean, what exactly is no, I don't want to duh. I have a path for you. It's not just your product. It's not just your service. It's the employees and the culture you build inside that communicates that with outside. Name a company that's done it. Disney. Apple's trying to do it. The companies that are...
Southwest Airlines.
Who is it? Oh, Southwest Airlines is a great example.
Wegmans.
Oh, that's an even better. I don't shop at Wegmans, but I've seen the videos. I mean, these iconic companies, conceptually what they do is they don't build values or employee engagement. They build the right values, the right employee engagement. So Wegmans hires somebody who fits. Southwest Airlines hires somebody as a flight attendant who will give me a customer a better experience. I mean, to me, it's, and then I'm in HR. I'm not saying, come support our training program. I'm saying, no, come support an investment that will increase investor and customer value. And to the CEO, if you're not interested in that, that's fine. Sell short. But that's where I hope we can begin to move. Now, some of the HR people are there. Some are not ever going to get there. They're HR people. I went into HR because I like people. And I feel like saying, my wife's a psychologist, and she says the same thing. She's a very good psychologist. I went into HR because I went into psychology because I like people. She said, you are so wrong, because the only people you're going to meet are not likable. I mean, and I don't mean to make fun of that. And I don't mean to make fun of those involved, because I think the therapeutic process is sacred and important, but you're going to meet a lot of people that aren't likable. You got to like the problems and the challenges that organizations and people give you. So how do I help Wegmans transfer that incredible culture in Upper New York, if I remember right, to second and third and fourth generation? How do I help Seth? Anyway, that's the question for HR that I think is more fun.
Well, one of the things that you always has struck me about your work is that you talk more about customers and other stakeholders than anybody else in HR. I never hear anybody else talking about HR, and yet I read your posts and your work, and you always try to create a business and customer orientation. Isn't silos one of our very biggest challenges in organizations, the way we separate customers and employees?
Yeah.
What can be done about that?
You know, we're seeing some progress. This is a horrible metaphor, and I hope it doesn't offend. Some prophets tell the people they're damned and going to hell if they don't repent. I'd rather be the prophet, and I know it's a bad metaphor, and I'm not a prophet, who says, here's what heavens looks like and a pathway to get there. So I don't want to tell people how screwed up they are. I want to tell people there is something out there that's really cool. And if you start doing this, it's going to encourage you to have more success. And I think we're seeing it. For example, Adobe, the head of customer relations, is also the head of HR.
Yep.
Great, Donna Morris. Although I think she just moved to Walmart.
Yeah, she's left. She went to another company.
She went to Walmart.
They actually did a reorganization, and I'm not sure whether they've retained that.
I don't know it.
Alexion
just did the same thing. Donna Morris is so fun to follow because she went from Adobe to Walmart, and now you see her posting. She's using LinkedIn a lot, and she's talking that our Walmart employees, 2.5 million of them, I mean, associates, team members, whatever their metaphor is, they are the lead indicator of our customer scores. And so I think you see people like Donna and others starting. These are the lead indicators, and I hope they're. Now, there's some HR people who, I was just on a call with a business team, and he said, yeah, I'm really doing a good job with collaboration. I'm breaking silos. So I'm in this business, and I've got, pick it doesn't matter. I'm in manufacturing, I've got marketing, I've got R&D, and so I'm doing collaboration in my team. And I said to him, I said, so have you brought in a supplier? Have you brought in a customer? Have you invited an investor? Are you going outside the boundary of your company to do collaboration across inside and outside boundaries? And he said, no, I haven't thought of it. And I said, your team doesn't exist unless a customer buys your product, unless an investor thinks it's worthy of investing, debt or equity, and bring them in to what you're doing. Those are the kind of things, Bruce, that I get so excited. So example, a company's doing a training program. They have 30 leaders for 3 or 4 days, and they got strategy, finance, all this stuff. I love to say to the company, you got 30 people, bring in 3 to 5 customers. It's not going to cost you anything. Well, we're doing private stuff. You mean you don't want your customers to know what you're doing? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And by the way, there may be a moment when the CEO comes in and says, this is an income, fine. Just take 30 minutes and go to another room, and then afterwards I'll tell you what they said. But bring in your customers. Let them see what you're doing. Bring in your investors. So if I'm out there at clarion call, get outside your boundaries, I am so grateful that people like you and others are doing it. And it's one of my frustrations with some of the scorecards that ISO 9, whatever, I was so impressed you knew the number. It's ISO 206543. What's the number?
30414.
It was on the tip of my tongue. I'm so 30414. That's a number I'm going to remember. Bruce, 30414. Yeah, I wish we would connect those scores to the business results, because that's what matters. That's what matters.
That's the only thing that matters. And yet, because let me ask you about this issue. We just had a great interview in our ESM media with Jack and Patty Phillips. I don't know whether you know them.
They are so good. So good.
Oh, and what I love about them is they're so candid. I mean, they're from Birmingham, Alabama. You may as well think they're from Manhattan. Boy, they don't mince words. And basically what they said, they agreed with you. They see positive signs in HR. They see they made a couple of key points, which I'm asking about in a minute, but one of them was that there are way too many bright, shiny objects in HR. That HR tends to latch on to these little gimmicks. They talked about mindfulness, and they said, you know, mindfulness is very important, but if you don't do it as part of a business plan, how does that fit into the business plan? How does that fit into the organizational goals? And I have seen so many programs, bright, shiny objects, no ROI. I would say I'd use a number of 80% of incentive programs, recognition programs, training programs are done because we have a budget, I have to do it, and there's little ROI and there's little integration with the overall business plan. Am I being a cynic?
Yeah, well, let me agree. You're being a cynic, and I hope the next statement is, let's move beyond that. Let's find ways. That's what I love about guidance. I love the idea. So there's 10 initiatives I could do. Which one of those 10 is going to have the most impact on moving the needle on your net promoter score, on your revenue from targeted customers, on your customer share? Which of those is going to have an impact on your price earnings ratio? To me, that's what's, I'll give an example of where I hope we're moving. And I hope folks get on. We have a little website, rbl.ai. I'm not trying to pitch our stuff, but that's what we're trying to do. For example, you do leadership competencies and you say, here's your 10 competencies: vision, execution, strategy, blah, blah, blah. And here's what we usually do. You score yourself 4.0, your peers score you 4.2, the global average of the top 20% is 4.5. Build on your strengths, overcome your weaknesses, we're done. And we go, oh, that's really cool. And it could be competencies, it could be engagement. Here's the drivers of engagement. It could be culture, it could be any host of things. We've now added 4 columns. One column: employee, morale, commitment, productivity, whatever employee is. Financial results, customer results, investor results, the scorecard. Now what I love to say is, here's your 10 competencies. And for those who do statistics, it's a pretty simple one. Let's take investor. Let's do a regression. Which of those 10 competencies will have moved the needle on your price earnings ratio? So for the same earnings, you'll get a premium. You know, that's pretty helpful because it may be the one I do best. Let's say I set a vision, I get a 4 or 5 and I'm really good, but it's 30% or 40% of what gives investors confidence. So even though you're the best in the world at a 4 or 5, you better become a 4 or 8 because that's the one that investors are going to pay attention to. Let's assume there's one I'm sucky at. Sucky's, and I don't even know, what could it be? Develops a succession plan. I don't care what it is. I'm not good at it. I get a 2.0, but investors don't value it. Then don't do it. Don't do it. Do those things of the 10 leadership competencies that investors will pay a premium for. That's guidance.
Dave, how many companies are doing this? Honestly,
None. That's why we build a guidance system. I mean, to me, that's the next step in HR beyond scorecards, dashboards. I mean, go to rbl.ai. This is, by the way, people say, oh, you're just coming up with something new in the pandemic. It took me a year to create this blank because
tell us a little bit more about it.
So we said there's 4 pathways HR controls. Talent. We should do things that build talent. And we discovered there's 10 areas in talent you can manage: leadership, organizational capabilities or culture, and HR itself. So for each of those 4 pathways, we can now do a guidance system that says, where should I invest in order to deliver employee, customer, business, or financial or investor results? We're collecting the data set, and I hope the Phillips would appreciate this. We've not gone full bore because we said we're not smart enough without a pilot. So in each of those 4 pathways, we're getting 100 companies. Then I'm going to go sit in a room with the lights out and become a statistics geek again. Actually, I'm going to do my dissertation. Actually, I'm going to probably hire a geek because I'm so out of date. But we're going to say, this is the research. And by the way, I think this is going to blow the field away. Big consulting firms charge you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a leadership assessment. We're going to give it to you. Just go online, do it. It's free. But what we want to then do is we want to give you guidance. So you've done your 360. We'll give you that. That technology, that's a free good. Now, where should you invest in order to create more price earnings ratio?
Now, how far is it built? Is this built or you're building?
It's built. It's online. rbl.ai. We need to get 400 companies, 100 in each path. By the way, everybody's saying, Dave, you got enough, go for it. I really love statistics. I know you do too, but I love good statistics. Somebody said to me the other day, I've done a study. And I said, oh, that's great. What did you find? And I said, what was your sample? 20 friends on LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. rbl.ai. Anybody could go on it. And by the way, it's still in the pilot phase. I know the two Phillips would just appreciate, we're being thoughtful about it. I hope in the next couple of weeks we've got it. And anyway, so when you get me excited about analytics, that's the moonshot that we're trying to do. So,
well, we're going to follow up with you separately. We're going to do an article on that, connect you with the Phillips. But moving on, this is the kind of thinking, obviously, that drives organizational results. If you focus on the things which you've done more of yield better results. The work of the Phillips in terms of ROI of all these incentive recognition loyalty programs, and Dave, I look at so many of them, and on the one hand, you'd say to the company, well, you could cut every one of them and nothing would change, except that would send a signal to everybody, well, wait a minute, they're cutting everything. I mean, so to you, how would you recommend organizations now in the time of COVID? Isn't it time to stop doing all these dumb things that don't do anything? But on the other hand, you can't get rid of them without shocking the organization.
Totally. Three comments. First, I love the Phillips's work about ROI. I might change the I. I don't think it's just return on investment. I think it's return on intangibles, because the intangible value of a public company is usually 60 to 80% of the value. And so I agree with ROI. That's a financial metric, but I like intangibles. Second, I totally agree with you. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. In fact, I think out of crises come opportunities for reinvention and reimagination. And I hope companies are going back and saying, we're not going to do things the way we've done them. We're going to try to reshift. I'm on a task force right now, for example, and by the way, reinvention means you don't have an answer going in. It's a brilliant group that's just being formed to say, how do we rethink diversity? Because clearly that's a societal issue that we have to begin to handle. It's a tender issue. It's an emotional issue. Doing the things we've done haven't worked. So how do we reinvent that? And we're trying to create what's called rookie smarts. Bob Eichinger talks about that. A rookie says, I come in with history, but I come in without an answer. I don't know the answer. Let's go discover it. Let's discover it. I hope we see that happening. So I would so agree with you that if we come out of this, everybody in 2000, I'm old enough to remember, the World Trade Center, the 2001, we're going to have Americana, we're going to have family. It dropped. 2008 recession, the crisis, it'll change. Recidivism. I can't even say it. Can you say the word?
Recidivism.
Okay. Thank you. I now have a partner that I can't. Anyway, we fall back, don't Pat. I lose weight. I gain weight. I mean, we fall back. I hope that this crisis is large enough that it moves us to really reinvent and reimagine some things. And in the analytics space, I hope it's not about analytics. You'll be interested in, you'd have no reason to know this. We've studied HR competencies for decades. In the last round, we had 9 competencies. One of them was analytics. Do HR people know how to do analytics? By the way, it's so interesting. I see a lot of people out there claiming HR people should be analytical, should be analytical. Well, we did analytics on analytics. We studied, does your knowing analytics help your business win? And of the 8, it was 8 out of 9. And so I did a piece called, let's do analytics on analytics. There are people in our field out saying, let's stack competencies, here they are, and it's all about analytics. And I go, we did analytics on your data, on analytics, and it showed they don't have any impact on business. Here's what we discovered. HR analytics don't matter. Business information in analytics matters a lot. And so that logic of scorecards and dashboards, the insights, the guidance, if your information gives you asymmetry, and I'm sorry to throw a stupid word, but it's not about the data, it's about the asymmetry that lets me win in the marketplace. If the information you collect gives me asymmetry with my customers, I have some items you can't get elsewhere, you win. And so HR analytics is not about HR, and it's not about the analytics. It's about information that provides market asymmetries. Okay, boy, that's another dissertation. It's almost as boring as numerical taxonomy.
No, it isn't, because at the end of the day, excuse me for putting it in layman's terms, you're basically saying you really have to take a strategic and systematic approach and don't just check off the boxes. So much of what we do, we got to check out diversity. We need diversity. No, you're not going to serve diversities until you realize it's an opportunity. Yeah. Diversity is an opportunity. Oh, I can broaden my markets. If I have more employees who are African American, then more customers will be happy to do business with me. Or if I have older people on my team. So I view all of these things as opportunities, but it seems to me, in manufacturing, we learned that we had to be proactive. The quality management movement back in the 80s. Yep. America is, you're old enough to remember we were getting our butts kicked by the Japanese. Why? Because they were applying the work of Deming, who said you've got to have a strategic and systematic, proactive approach to quality and not wait for a problem and then react. We woke up to that. But then so in manufacturing, I think we've done a pretty good job of being proactive and avoiding problems. Like my wife likes to say that we men are horrible. She said in terms of planning, because we wait for the problem to occur. And she said, women see it coming. I don't know whether that's true, but certainly better management is being proactive. And I don't think we've come, to me, it gets back to what you said before, guidance. We've got all of the tools now. We have all the HR analytics we need now. We have all the AI we need now. There's so much data we're not even using, right? So if we go back to saying, it really goes back to the CEO recognizing as a result of COVID, wait a minute, if I don't have any customers and I don't have any employees, my tangible assets are worthless, right? They're worthless. So we've learned in a real way like never before. This is unlike any other, none of the other, the Great Recession didn't make that statement that without people, you're nothing. So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. I'm mindful of the time. We do have a little bit more. One thing I found very interesting, there's very little training on engagement or enterprise or the concept of organizational engagement in HR.
Why do you think that is? I mean, you've studied this more than me. Why do you think that is? This is your institute and your enterprise.
I honestly, Dave, that's what I wanted to ask you. It makes, and by the way, when you ask surveys of HR people now, what are the three most important things right now? Oh, it's to engage employees. And now, by the way, if you ask CEOs, I'm lucky to have a lot of clients and business friends who are CEOs of mid-sized companies, not Fortune 500. If you ask every single one of them what their big issues right now, they're all people issues. Everyone, besides the financing and getting the PPE, blah, 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 that's been an issue. But then it's, oh my gosh, I just lost 30% of my employees. I don't know whether I'm ever going to get them back. I don't know. They'll say to you, I've lost a ton of knowledge. I don't even know what I've lost. And I realize I may never get them back because by the time I can hire them, they'll be somewhere else. Same with customers, same with distribution partners. So suddenly the CEO is faced with his or her number one problem is people, and yet we don't even learn about it. You think about it, there are all these books like, tips on how to engage people, but they're all like bright, shiny objects. Oh, do this, do that. You and I both know that you can't check off the boxes when it comes to motivating people. You have children, you raise children, you can't check off the boxes and employees are the same. So do you have any idea why engagement, we've been talking about it for 20 years, hasn't gone up. We all say it's important, and yet it's not taught in most business. Do you guys even at Ross have a course on strategic engagement strategies? Probably not.
Well, and again, you have so many great insights that are hard to pull apart. Sometimes Bob Eichinger, and I don't know if you've met Bob, he's a brilliant colleague in this field, and I encourage you to meet him. He's a curmudgeon. He is just so good. He was at Pillsbury, at Pepsi, created a whole bunch of, and is still creating in his more senior years. He and I said, HR is a field of frou-frou. We love the latest, greatest, shiny object stuff. And that's gone on for years. I mean, the 9 box is a shiny object. The latest performance is a shiny object. Right now in the employee engagement world, it's all called employee experience.
Yeah.
And when I try to pull apart what's there that was not part of engagement, commitment, in fact, I'm doing a talk on that this week. I went back, and I'm not dropping names, but I went back to Hackman and Oldham stuff on job enrichment, autonomy, variety, skill. No, it was autonomy, variety, feedback. There were 5 dimensions. And I thought, these guys did this great work. One of the problems in our field, and now I'm an old guy talking to another old guy, so nobody should listen under 50, but we're not building on the past. What we're doing is reinventing the past. And so I called it circular thinking. If you don't know the past, you're going to go out and find, wow, there's leaders who are very autocratic, and there's other leaders who are more open and listening. And I go, Doug McGregor called that theory X, theory Y in 1960. We had to build on that stuff. So take the work, Bruce, you've done. There is great work on engagement. Build on it. Has it delivered everything it could? Of course not. Will it ever? Probably not. But build on it and find ways to keep moving that field forward rather than relabeling. One of my frustrations in HR, and we're into the frustration world, I see a lot of repackaging going on.
Yep.
We relabel, we repackage, and when I pull the pack,
say it again. It didn't work the first time, so we think if we rename it, it will work. And the Phillips, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the Phillips said something. They said the whole issue with experience and happiness, he said, there's no correlation between productivity, quality, and happiness. None. There is a correlation with retention. So if you make everybody happy, you're going to retain a bunch of potentially happy people who are not productive, who are unfocused on the organizational goals.
Agreed. And so for me, the starting place is almost always, in fact, I just did and I won't name the company. It was a company meeting just before this call with a couple of hundred business leaders from around the world, online, virtual. And the first question I asked was, what's the best thing that we as a company can give our employees? A sense of meaning and purpose, belief. B, a sense of becoming better, learning and growing. C, a sense of becoming part of a community. D, all of the above, or E, none of the above. Believe, become, belong, all the above or none of the above. 95% were in the first 4. And my answer was, it's E, none of the above. The best thing we as 200 leaders of this company can give our employees is an organization that succeeds in the marketplace. Because unless and until you succeed in the marketplace, there is no workplace. Boy, do I find that coming out of this coronavirus. I see people saying, it's all about people. If you don't treat your people well. And I feel like going, no, if there's no customers, there are no people to be treated well. Now, you connect the two. I mean, how do we best meet our customer needs? By meeting our employee engagement needs. I get that. But to me, I love to say, what is it we can do to help our customers have a better experience? How do we now help our people discover their role in helping make that happen? That mindset is so different with the CEO. It's so different with HR. That's the vision I envision. Is everybody there yet? No, I'm going to keep calling for it until I fall dead, probably. So,
well, by the way, that's the headline of this webinar, by the way, of this show. That you right now, right there, in my view, is the headline of this show.
Thank you.
The whole idea, and by the way, we do have a viewer who made a very good comment. He said that the answer to why we're not getting engagement scores is we lack the commitment and the active support of, I'm reading his notes, of the CEO, number one. So this isn't just something, a speech. I don't call in Anthony Robbins or call in Dave and get everybody all jazzed up and then go back to work. No, it gets built into your culture, your communications, into your learning, into every facet of your business. And this gentleman also says, HR doesn't have a seat at the table and consequently the active support of the CEO because they aren't linking what they are doing to the organization's success.
We're saying the same, by the way, and I don't want to show the name of the company, but these are the notes I just took from the previous session. The CEO kicked it off. Here's where he started. You're going to be shocked. Our valuation is not what it should be. Guess what? CEOs worry about that. I mean, duh. And then he said, we have all the resources in the world, but we have not created the culture that gets our people engaged in a way that does it. So my message, I mean, by the way, that's the CEO. And it's not somebody wrote the speech for him. He feels that. And to me, that's, by the way, when my CEO starts there, the rest of the message is pretty easy because he gets it. Now, he may not, he gets it. That 20-60-20, he's in that 20%. I should tell you the company, we should all go by stock, but that would be totally unethical. Trading.
Thank you.
Anyway, Totally unethical. But then it becomes easier because, and then by the way, his question is, okay, I get it. What do you do? And that's where those of us who build the infrastructure, call us HR geeks, if you will, there are specific things you can do to help us move. So,
well, now, by the way, it gets to the whole issue of strategic and systematic. That's really the fundamental values of ISO.
Well said.
ISO basically says the way they have practiced, first off, you have to be strategic. You have to, what are we trying to accomplish? The CEO, that's now a requirement in 62 business ISO standards. And by the way, ISO standards are just roadmaps. They're voluntary, they're collective knowledge that an organization can buy for $150, and you never have to get certified. And they're, you know, and the wonderful idea of it is if you're strategic and you're systematic, you know, and then you identify all the people that can help you get there. Then you identify what their interests are, what motivates them.
Nice.
What do they need? What do they need to do that? And then how am I going to measure that? And how am I going to continually improve through an involvement?
Nice.
It's like Six Sigma. It's easy to say, but you can never stop. So that's why I guess it was Peter, who was it? Tom Peters, who said management by walking around, which gets back to your calendar analogy, right?
Yeah.
So, I actually worked for Tom Peters' acolyte, if you will, one of the they're long gone, fantastic company, and the CEO managed by walking around. But he did, that's not what he did though. There were clear values at the org. We all knew what that company stood for. It was an employee-owned company, Build Communications, as I said, long gone. Every employee had stake in it. We had very clear goals. We had very clear values. We had all the tools, communication tools, everything was integrated and aligned. I've rarely seen that. And the organization, Dave, grew by 50. Their goal was to grow 15% a year. They did it almost every year. They even did it in 1987, which was when I was there, one of the, a disaster year. So getting back to, we're just about done. Do you think that there's an opportunity, and you kind of touched on this, but I think it's a good conclusion before we give people a chance for any questions, that COVID really could make a permanent change? That this is such a, by the way, I just heard of a CEO the other day complaining, I'm getting tired of vacuuming and washing the dishes, and this is a billionaire individual.
I wonder why she's so tired of that, because she's the CEO. Her husband used to, anyway, will this change? I don't know. I just did a column on recidivism, the thing, and I think it doesn't change unless we understand it has to be systematic and long-term. I mean, that's one of the things I like about the Phillips is they're not looking for short-term quick hits. For me, it's a fad diet. I'm not going to eat anything from 6 a.m. until 8 a.m. Wow, that's a great diet. Then at 8 a.m., I go crazy for 12 hours. I mean, fad diets don't work. Fad HR programs don't work. And I think that's where you've got to get systematic about the culture and the underlying systems that drive the long-term change. So I tend to be a little bit optimistic with a healthy skepticism. But I would say, and I love the line, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. A crisis is, and it's not my line. It's Albert Einstein said it, Winston Churchill said it, Martin Luther King said it. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. And if you lose, this crisis is legitimate, huge. And it's an incredible opportunity to try to reinvent and reimagine what could happen. And I see some companies doing that.
Well, we have a few more minutes. So I'm going to ask you a simple question, and then one big philosophical one, and we'll break up. In terms of companies making changes, somebody said to me recently, oh, the CEOs now, with all this unemployment, they won't even care about employees anymore. They'll view employees as completely expendable and that they can replace them all and that the employee engagement movement is going to die. What's your answer to that?
I don't usually swear, but my answer to that is that's horseshit. So that's, by the way, I should not say that. That was inappropriate. It's just wrong. It's wrong. I mean, that's a troglodyte. What I used to do is get mad at somebody who believed that. What I now do is I feel sorry for him, because the person who has that mental model probably never grew up appreciating or understanding what good employee relations could look like. And so my wife, a psychologist, she sees people who are damaged. And instead of getting mad at them, you feel deep empathy, because probably there's something in their heritage that has created a dysfunction. And somebody with that mindset, they probably were never led by leaders who had the capacity to make a sustainable difference. I should not have sworn. I don't usually
Well,
do that.
it's not, I don't, in New York, that's not a swear word, that's French.
Yeah.
Finally,
Well, I could say it in French, fiche-moi la paix. And
well, you've heard this concept of stakeholder capitalism. And I want to conclude with that, and I think we're going to get a couple of questions here. And I promised you have to go at the top of the hour and you will be done.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have buzzwords all galore, right? And buzzwords can often do big damage. But stakeholder capitalism to me is a very intriguing one. First off, it's because of the people who are using it, or truly the in crowd of business, you know, the Business Roundtable, Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, Larry Fink of BlackRock, and it's been in Fortune, Forbes, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, it's very new. Very few people have heard of it yet. And here's what's interesting, and this is my last question to you. Stakeholder capitalism has two definitions, and one of them has actually created a controversy that's affected some, the Heritage Foundation, a couple of other groups, Harvard Law School came out against it, and that defines stakeholder capitalism as a method in which the company is run to balance the needs of all stakeholders, so that the benefits to the stockholder or to the shareholder do not outweigh the benefits to the stakeholder, to the other stakeholders. And I frankly think that's ridiculous, but I want your opinion. I think the proper definition of that is that stakeholder capitalism is a strategy that achieves organizational objectives in a sustainable way by addressing the interests of all the stakeholders that contribute to success, right? What do you think of this stakeholder?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about our conversation. You know, I've seen your comments, and I really think you're thoughtful and helpful. So there's a lot of words out there. Center for Higher Ambition that Mike Beer is doing out of Harvard, stakeholder capitalism. We did a book called Leadership Capital Index. I think what we're at right now is an incredible period of innovation around knowing that it's not just about greed and short-term results. Michael Douglas, greed is good, Wall Street, we know that's gone. Here's the message I would say, and I don't know which term is going to catch on. We all have terms. The Business Roundtable in the United States came out with their 150 or 180 CEOs, profits and purpose, or profits and people. I think there's a word wrong in there, and it's a mindset. I think it's profits through purpose, profits through people. Because the and kind of implies Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we'll do profits. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday we'll do people. No, these have to be intricately connected. And I think that's what I heard you saying is, my friend Wayne Brockbank said, don't talk about employee experience, talk about human experience, and the human includes employees and customers. Never do one without the other. And I think when you say profits through people, profits through purpose, you're forcing a connection across those. So it's not, tonight I'm going to do this, tomorrow I'm going to do this. You got to navigate that inherent tension. That's where I hope this goes. That's the work we've been trying to pursue. We've been doing it with investors. We've been doing it with customers, with citizens. And I hope that's, if it's Higher Ambition, the Mike Beer Group, if it's stakeholder capitalism, if it's Leadership Capital Index, whatever it is, I hope we get more executives to see that this is not an either or. I'm going to make profits through people. Good. One more minute, and then I am going to have to, 2 more minutes, and I'm going to have to go.
Literally 2 minutes. There's this gentleman asks, he says, if there are 2 key takeaways for either a solution provider in an HR person who wants to go to the CEO and management and say, look, we have to take a more strategic and systematic approach. This might be a tough question. What advice would you give that?
I'll do it real quick. Number 1, start with the customers. Don't start with what I'm doing in HR. Look outside your business. Who are my customers? Why are they buying? How do we differentiate from competitors? Number 2, when you meet with the CEO, start with her scorecard or his scorecard. Don't come in with an HR scorecard. That's stupid. CEO, what is it you're held accountable for by your board of directors, by the stakeholders? And my job in HR is to help the CEO manage their scorecard so that they can better succeed in the marketplace. Don't start with where you go. That's where I'd start.
Hey, you've got to run, Dave. Perfect answer. Couldn't have hoped for better. Thanks for this. It's going to be recorded, as you know, and live for a year.
You got
Thanks.
it. Hey, have a great day. Thank you for your great work, Bruce. I just really enjoy your thoughtfulness. And now I'm going to connect you forever with Renoir. So you connect me with you connect me with my grandchildren's pictures, and I'll connect you with Renoir. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dave. Have a great day and week. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for attending. Hi there. Yeah. Okay, well, when you're done, come down and measure with me, okay? It'll take 1 minute. Well, I can do it without you. Not a big deal. I can do it.